Hello and welcome back to the Foundations Classroom in the Reclaim Your Purpose school community. I'm your host, Marvin Schneider, and I'm here again with my wife and partner in this work, world-renowned energy healer, Jen Ward. Up to this point in the Foundations series, we've talked about why people feel disconnected, why the question of purpose tends to surface when it does, how ego interference creates urgency and noise, and how energetic clearing helps restore clarity. Today, we're moving into a phase that almost everyone struggles with, not because it's difficult, but because it's poorly understood. The core question we are going to answer today is, how do you actually live your life while purpose is reorganizing?
Yes, because once the old motivations fall away, people are often left without familiar reference points. If you're watching this, you've probably gone through one of the half dozen life triggers that cause people to question their purpose and the meaning of their life, often for the first time. If that's you, welcome. You're in good company. If you've gone through one of those trigger moments, you know that you can't go back to how you were living before, but you probably don't yet know what you're moving toward. That in between space is where people either destabilize themselves or learn to stay present long enough for real clarity to emerge.
I want to ground this conversation in something very real. Recently, I was watching a YouTube video from a couple who, by every external metric, were successful. They had high stress careers, they earned good money, they had the house, they had the vacations, they had the cars. In short, they had the lifestyle most people are taught to chase. And yet they described hitting a point where they thought, okay, now what? They talked about realizing that their happiness came from short lived hits, a new car, a vacation, next milestone, and how quickly that satisfaction faded.
Yep. And that realization moment is incredibly important because it's not a failure of ambition, it's not ingratitude, and it's not a lack of discipline. It's often the first moment the soul stops being satisfied by external markers alone.
What stood out for me was how clearly they described the loop: hustle, make money, spend money, repeat. From a physical world perspective, that's a classic pattern of chronic nervous system overactivation. When you're living in that loop long enough, the body and mind eventually say, this ain't working.
That's the higher self withdrawing support from a timeline that no longer serves growth. Motivation drops, urgency dissolves, the old drivers stop working, and people misinterpret that as failure when it's actually reorganization.
Yes, and reorganization is the topic of this video. So let's define the reorganization process clearly. When purpose is reorganizing, you're not lost, you're not broken, and you're not behind. What's happening is that the identity structures you previously relied upon are loosening. And without those structures, people feel unmoored.
From a higher vantage point perspective, this is the soul recalibrating its orientation. The higher self no longer feeds energy into outdated motivations, and until the system quiets enough to receive new direction, there's a gap. That gap is not a mistake, it's necessary.
But culturally, we're terrible at gaps. We're trained to interpret pauses as problems. So let me take a journey into why this gap phase feels so uncomfortable for a lot of people. You may be one of them. From a psychological standpoint, most people regulate themselves through activity. Busyness keeps anxiety at bay. Productivity gives identity. Motion creates the illusion of safety. So when motion slows, discomfort rises.
And energetically, that discomfort triggers the ego. The ego thinks its job is to maintain continuity, identity, momentum, control. So when the old structure dissolves, the ego gets louder and goes into overdrive. It creates urgency. It manufactures drama. It pushes for decisions, not because it knows what's right, but because it can't tolerate stillness. Because, as we said in the ego interference video, the ego doesn't have the full overview and blueprint, the higher self does.
So, with that as context, let's move into the more practical aspect of this video and answer the question: how do I actually live my life while purpose is reorganizing? In answering this question, we're going to draw on the very real experiences of a number of people that are working with us in the 12-week transformation program. So this is solidly researched guidance.
Yes, I'm so grateful to be able to help the people who have signed up for the intensive transformation program. This is where a lot of the real orientation, clearing, and stabilization work happens. When we work with clients in the 12-week transformation program, we're drawing on my lifetimes of capabilities as an energy healer. I'm able to see past life engrams in the client's Akashic records. And from that, I'm able to paint a picture of the client's soul journey, identify core energetic blockages, and systematically work to clear those energetic interferences. But that is just the beginning. I then use my medical intuitive skills to reorient energy pathways in the client's brain and core physiology systems. This is a huge breakthrough. What makes the medical intuitive work so important is that the passionate pursuit of purpose in the physical world requires a willing and able body. Trauma, suppression, and long-standing survival patterns don't just sit in memory or belief systems. They imprint into the nervous system, the endocrine system, and the brain's energetic wiring. When those systems are misaligned or locked into stress responses, the client may intellectually understand their purpose, but yet remain physiologically unable to embody it. In the 12-week transformation program, I work directly with these deeper layers, rebalancing neural pathways, calming hypervigilant stress circuits, and restoring energetic flow through the organs and glands that govern vitality, confidence, and expression. As the body begins to feel safe again, clarity stabilizes, motivation returns naturally, purpose stops feeling abstract and starts becoming livable because the entire system is finally working together instead of against itself.
The third string in the bow in the 12-week transformation program is psychological reconditioning. This is where a lot of people finally start to gain traction in the physical world. Once Jen has cleared energetic interference and stabilized the physiological systems, there is suddenly space to work with the mind in a way that isn't constantly being hijacked by stress, fear, or old trauma responses. But that doesn't mean the mind automatically changes its habits. The brain is efficient. It will keep running the same programs unless something actively interrupts them. This is where we work very deliberately with interrupting automatic responses and installing new ones. We teach clients how to recognize the moment a familiar loop starts with behaviors like avoidance, urgency, self-doubt, overthinking, and people-pleasing, and then consciously disrupt it before it cascades. From there, we introduce simple, repeatable practices that retrain the brain to associate safety, competence, and agency with forward movement. Over time, the nervous system learns that action doesn't equal danger, and the mind stops generating drama to protect the body from imagined threats. When energetic interference is cleared, the body is regulated, and psychological responses are retrained. Momentum becomes sustainable. You're no longer forcing yourself forward. You're operating from a system that actually supports growth.
If you're able to, we highly recommend you sign up for the 12-week transformation program. It is profound. But if you're not able to at this stage, there is something we can offer that can help you during the reorganization phase.
Yes. Let's start by dealing with what not to do. This may contradict some other well-meaning advice out there, but doing these things may actually make the reorganization phase worse. Number one, don't make major identity-based decisions. From the physical world side, this is not the time to quit your job impulsively, end relationships just because they feel uncomfortable, relocate to find yourself, or launch new projects to escape uncertainty. Those moves often feel relieving in the moment, but they're usually driven by nervous system dysregulation, not clarity.
From a higher vantage point perspective, decisions made from destabilization tend to recreate the same lesson in a new form. You don't escape misalignment by changing scenery. The point is that you want to have new positive experiences, not repackage the same experiences in a different form.
Exactly. Let's move on to number two in the what not to do category, and that is don't chase stimulation. When people feel empty, They often increase stimulation and chase more content, more goals, more spiritual material, more productivity. But from a nervous system perspective, this keeps you in a constant threat response loop. So do yourself a favor and don't sign up for the latest Tony Robbins seminar or other high energy motivation course.
Energetically, chasing stimulation drowns out the subtle frequencies through which higher guidance communicates. Clarity does not compete with noise, so the goal in the reorganization phase is to quieten and reflect.
Yep. Here comes number 3 in the what not to do category. Don't pathologize the experience. Feeling flat, uncertain, or unmotivated does not automatically mean something is wrong. Often it means something important is shifting. Mislabeling this phase as failure leads people to override it, and that delays integration.
Well, that's all good and well, but what should you actually be doing instead?
From a grounded physical world perspective, the priority here is stabilization, not figuring out your purpose, but creating the conditions where clarity can emerge. So, I want to give you a couple of simple practices that you can do right now. The first is to maintain simple, predictable structure. That means consistent sleep and wake times, regular meals, gentle movement, maintaining basic responsibilities. This isn't avoidance, it's regulation. Psychologically speaking, this is the same principle used in trauma stabilization. During reorganization, your nervous system needs predictability.
And energetically speaking, consistency tells the system it's safe enough to release control. Safety is a prerequisite for higher self communication. When you repeat simple stabilizing practices day after day, you are not just creating order in your schedule, you are teaching your energy field that it no longer needs to stay hyper vigilant. Most people don't realize how much of their ego activity is actually a survival response running through the nervous system. Consistency softens that grip. It tells the body that it doesn't have to anticipate threat, and it tells the soul that there is enough containment to come forward. This is why clarity often arrives quietly rather than dramatically. When the system is no longer braced, higher self information can filter through without distortion. You stop receiving guidance through urgency, anxiety, or pressure, and instead experience it as calm knowing, subtle direction, or an inner sense of this way. That signal is always present. It's just usually drowned out by overstimulation and internal noise. So when we emphasize simple practices, we are not lowering the bar. We are creating the conditions for precision. This is how higher consciousness becomes usable in a human life.
The second practice I want to give you is to shift your journaling focus from adding stuff to subtraction. Journaling is an incredibly useful and underutilized practice in my experience, but don't journal about what is my purpose. That activates the ego. Instead, track subtraction. What feels heavier than it used to? What no longer holds my attention? What quietly brings relief? This gives your system space to disengage without forcing direction.
Yeah, pay attention to what changes, what feels different, what triggers you. Be the observer. That'll give you insights into what SFT taps you can do to clear the energy behind resistance, triggers, stressors, and so on.
Practice 3 is to schedule stillness without seeking answers. Set aside 10 to 15 minutes a day to sit quietly. No problem solving, no insight seeking, no visualization, no meditation. From a psychological perspective, this resembles mindfulness without goal orientation. As an aside, as useful as meditation is for seasoned meditators, if you are new to the practice at the time of reorganization, you can end up putting too much pressure on yourself if you don't achieve the goal offered by your favorite meditation guide.
That's a good point about meditation. I have never been a good meditator because there is too much expectation placed on the practice. And in some spiritual circles, there is a lot of one upmanship around attainment during meditation, which is ugly enough as it is. But even worse, there is then a good dose of shaming that goes on if you can't achieve a certain level of attainment during your own meditations. This kind of performative spiritual nonsense is just unhelpful in my view.
Yeah, some people can navigate the reorganization phase alone. Others need structure and containment, not because they're weak, but because identity destabilization is intense.
For sure. And that's where guided environments like this school community comes into play. And when you are ready, and if you need more assistance in going through the clearing and reorganizing process, consider becoming part of our premium masterclass in Divine Empowerment ongoing community events. Or for more hands on guidance, sign up for our 12-week transformation program.
Good advice. You're not meant to know everything right now. The higher self reveals direction when interference clears and safety is established. So take your time with it. Thanks everyone for joining us on this Foundations video. If you haven't already done so, make sure to join our free Reclaim Your Purpose school community. The link is in the description below. Look forward to catching you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.